You're listening to the Karmic Mirror podcast, where we explore the wisdom tucked within the layers of the self-help world.
Together, we bridge the gap between esoteric teachings and practical tools for everyday life, with self-love and personal growth at the heart of each conversation.
Whether you're a seasoned seeker or just beginning your path, join us and uncover the magic within and around you. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Karmic Mirror Podcast. Today, we are talking about coaching, life coaching, which is a really relevant topic, seeing as though both Allie and I are coaches. But most importantly, this is how we met. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Michelle. I know coaching holds a deep, deep place in my heart because it is where we met, and coaching has just personally really informed and supported my life a great deal. And collectively, I've been getting a lot of people asking, what is coaching? What does that mean? How do I utilize coaching? And I think you and I really got together and thought it's time for us to really highlight coaching in an episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about so many of the different esoteric systems like human design, like astrology and other healing modalities. And coaching is the one kind of through line that, like I said, we met in our coaching program. Back then it was called Journey. And today it's called Lumia, but I couldn't recommend it enough. I had a really great experience there. And we're going to get more into the specifics of coaching and the ICF credentials a little bit. But it just felt really right because we've referenced, experiences with coaching with clients, or oftentimes themes that arise in conversation are either, really poignant ones to bring up in the podcast, or they're also things that we've kind of experienced in our own lives and we want to reflect on a little bit more. And so today we're going to get into a little bit more of the gritty of what is coaching and kind of start to answer some of the common questions that do come up, like what is the difference between therapy and coaching, or why would you work with a coach? I think sometimes people can confuse whether it's therapy, coaching, even consulting can sometimes come into the mix. Mentorship. We use, right now in the world, there's so many different titles and labels, guides, healers, coaches, etc. And there's a time and there's a place and there's such beautiful purpose for all of those. So today we want to get into coaching because it's something that both Allie and I do in our daily lives with clients. And so today we are sharing our personal perspectives and experiences as both coaches and clients. And we're going to talk about how coaching has really woven into our own healing and our own growth paths. So.
Yeah, a lot lately. Michelle and I will just on the back end say, had another coaching call with a friend today. It's almost organic between you and I of once we, I would say, learn those skill sets, but ultimately a lot of times when you come to learn the quote unquote skill sets that it takes to be a coach, we realize that we've actually been doing that a lot in our lives organically and naturally. And once we had learned those coaching modalities, so almost like we can't steer away from it. And I know even in your and our conversations, oftentimes it can feel like a coaching conversation and being on the receiving end of coaching or asking the questions to get others to dive deeper. And it's just been coming up a lot in my life. I've been getting a lot of questions about what's the difference between coaching and therapy, which we'll tackle today. How do I know if I should work with a coach and how would that benefit me? So we're talking about it today. We'll share our perspectives and we'll start by really talking through the difference between coaching and therapy. When we look at therapy and we look at coaching, one of the main differentiating factors is that when we look at therapy, those are going to be situations where you are working through healing and dealing with past-oriented instances, trauma, situations, processing wounds, really that mental health support when you are looking to get therapy, these are going to be individuals who are licensed. And then when we switch over to coaching, this is where we think about present to future oriented. So possibility based and actionable. One way that was described to me that I often talk to my clients or people interested in coaching about is that we're at a level of living and we want to get to a level of thriving. Coaching is not, and I will say this again, it is not a replacement for therapy. And although in coaching, we can dive down to what might be the root cause, and root cause might be a traumatic event. It might be something that happened in the past. Coaches are not the ones that would necessarily be helping you to dive into that, if that makes sense. Michelle, add a little bit more color for what's coming up for you, how you differentiate between the two.
I think we should also preface that we're talking about talk therapy specifically, because that is generally what people consider when they are thinking about therapy. And
Yeah.
there are many other therapeutic modalities, but talk therapy and coaching. And I think the one easy one-liner that really summed it up for me when we went to Journey was that therapy really takes you from, and this is not for everyone, right? We're all unique and individual, but therapy can take you from suffering to baseline, and coaching can take you from baseline to thriving. Now, that is like a really oversimplified, but I also look at it as in therapy and in coaching, you may look at the exact same experience in your life, right? You may look at the same traumatic event that occurred in your life. And in therapy, you may be discussing how it made you feel and processing the wound and your healing. Whereas in coaching, you may look at that exact same experience and you're going to understand, okay, what about that? How did I show up in that experience? And how can I use that for the future? How can I take what worked for me there? How can I take the way that I showed up that was very aligned or that felt led with my strengths or possibility future oriented and use that in the future? And
I like that word baseline. That's the word I was missing because I've
yeah.
always said living, but of course we're all living because we're breathing.
Yeah, like surviving. Maybe suffering was too intense. Surviving to baseline, perhaps.
Yeah.
But like Ali said, you know, therapy is regulated, it is licensed. No, not anybody can just, become a therapist overnight and say, I'm offering therapy sessions. It doesn't work that way.
Mm.
Whereas coaching, yes, there is the International Coaching Federation, ICF accredited programs. And in my opinion, my personal opinion, obviously, I'm biased because we went to a program, but I think it's really important that if you want to coach people and you are really dedicated to supporting people in the context of life coaching, whatever your niche or non-niche, whatever you do, I think from an ethical standpoint, you should go to an ICF accredited program and get some type of formal learning simply because one, coaching as an industry is like the wellness industry is like this multi-billion dollar industry that has blown up in many years. I mean, who do you not know that has knows a coach or is considering coaching? There are so many of us out there, and there are, like I said,
Yeah.
different niches. People can specialize in different things if you want. And you're oftentimes encouraged to, but what I think is really important to mention is that the ICF accredited programs are going to teach the core competencies of ICF. So to me, it's just really giving yourself one, the foundation of learning that's super, super critical. And also it's just ethical. The ICF, core competencies are really clear. But they're
Yeah.
really important to know before you just start coaching people. And I'm not saying that people, you may have a real talent and gift, a natural gift for guiding people and supporting and holding space. But there are just some things that should be universal in terms of learning. Like some of the core competencies are, demonstrates ethical practice, embodies a coaching mindset, establishes and maintains agreements, cultivates trust and safety, maintains presence, listens actively, evokes awareness, facilitates client growth. Like these are all things that I think you can branch into any area of coaching, but if you have that foundational knowledge, you're really starting out, I think, on the right foot and doing right by the people that you're going to serve. So that's my take.
1000%. And you're also trained and educated on the difference between therapy
Yes,
and coaching.
absolutely.
And so knowing when a client comes to you as a coach, where that line differentiates
Yeah.
between where you can support and lend your help and skill sets to that client versus when they would need a therapist. And that's really, really crucial. And
Hmm.
personally, I've been on the receiving end of my long-term life coach having conversations with me about that as well. It can blend together,
Yeah.
right? Because you can have a coach and you could have a therapist at the same time. But the education and the ethics behind that is really important. And I think sometimes people can confuse coaching with I'm a coach, I just tell people how to do things,
Hmm.
right? Which might go back to that athletics, and we've just translated that into the wellness space. But when we look at coaching, the big thing that really stands out for me in coaching is we believe that everybody has the answers to where they need to go and their next steps within them. This isn't necessarily a relationship built upon me telling you what to do. Now, I know you and I talk a little bit about we do create relationships with some of our clients that are a little bit more mentor based as well, depending on what their needs are, what they're looking for. And in a true sense, with coaching, coaching is asking questions and drawing information out of the client for them to build a pathway forward based on what they believe are the best next steps for them.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because going back to the coaching and the therapy simultaneously and to having the foundational knowledge to know when it's right to work with someone on both ends and when it's right to suggest something different. I think back to the different stages of change and, ultimately we'll get into this too, but if you're not at the stage that you are ready to actively make change and take steps forward or whatever that is, looks like for you, then maybe therapy or other healing modalities, right? Like, well, just to kind of button up this section of therapy and coaching, it's like therapy is helping you to heal the emotional wounds. It's helping you to process, to understand your past. And coaching is helping you move towards the future, right? It's taking all of that, but it's more goal oriented. It's more strengths oriented for me, anyways. I really, and I think the same with Ali, like it's all about strengths based coaching, you know, and working towards what makes you uniquely you and unlocking your potential. I think about coaching, like whether it's sports or not, right? At the underlying theme is that you're coaching someone to access their own potential. You're not giving it to them. You're not showing them the way. You're highlighting for them what they already know to be true or what already exists within them. And oftentimes you need to process, you need to heal before you're ready to move forward. And there's no right or wrong. It's just that, you may not be at that stage that you're ready to move forward fully. And maybe you are, but you still need therapy. I would say a lot of the people that I have worked with are in therapy at the same time or have done therapy for many, many years, talk therapy, and they are like, okay, something has to shift. Like I'm ready to do something differently. I'm ready to live my life differently. I'm ready to feel something differently than, everything that I already know. And coaching, yeah, sometimes it is a I don't think we've said this in these exact words, but it is a collaborative relationship. Like I think we've said this
Yeah.
before in past episodes, but there's no hierarchy in coaching. There is no I'm the expert and you're the learner. It's like, no, we are on the same level. I'm just helping to kind of, I love the visual of I'm helping hold a flashlight on our path together to show you the things that already exist in your path that you may have not seen. And so I hope that
Yeah.
ties up the therapy and coaching a little bit too.
Yeah, it does. And it's also very helpful to have a coach who is outside of the feelings and the emotions going
Hmm.
on in your world. And oftentimes when I'm coaching, and I know I've been on the receiving end of your coaching as well, able to concisely pull out those
Hmm.
themes or people saying, "Oh, I've never thought about it that way before."
Hmm.
Because you have someone in partnership that isn't emotionally tied to the outcome, right? And of
Yeah.
course, as coaches, we care about the outcomes of our clients. However, at the end of the day, that's not as directly impacting us. And so, thinking about how to know if coaching would benefit you from my personal experience, I needed coaching to literally bump into me. I had been going through a lot in my life, and I kept getting this recommendation to talk to who is now my 10-year plus life coach, Laura. And I just kept dragging my feet. And I remember our initial consultation. Well, one, I think I knew I was ready to take action. And that's a big thing with coaching. You just feel stuck, but you don't know what are the next best steps to take. And I remember talking with Laura, we had an initial consultation, and she had said, I think we would be a good fit. And we'll talk about how to find a good fit in just a little bit in the podcast. But she had said to me, I think therapy will help you, but here's the thing why I think coaching could help you. I think you're too smart for therapists because you'll lie, and then once they're onto you, you'll switch. And the funny part about that
Mm,
was, again, life bumping into me and seeing how my life was really going at that point. I had just attempted two different relationships with therapists that just did not seem like a good fit. And that's how I knew coaching could really
mhm.
benefit me because of what Laura outlined for me. She said, listen, this is a partnership and the answers are within you. And feeling that I could kind of control that and take the next steps, it built my confidence. And also,
Mhm.
when she talked a little bit about saying you need someone to kind of call you out on your stuff, but also receive you in a very loving way because you are very strong, but you have a very sensitive soul to
Yeah.
you. And that maybe falls in more to the nuance of the right coach for me. But in that conversation is what
Yeah.
led me to jumping in and trusting that a coaching relationship would make sense for me. Because if I'm being honest at the time, I still looked at it as, well, insurance doesn't cover coaching. It's coming out of my pocket. And there were all of these other roadblocks in the
Mhm.
way. And coaching is quite literally what has helped progress me and thrive in life, where therapy does have a place, but at that time was not the right fit for what I was looking and needing. That's my personal story. What else would you throw
Mhm.
out there,
Yeah.
Michelle?
I think what you said too about, does tie into finding the right coach because it sounds like, the person you work with is very intuitive. Not every person. I mean, everyone has the capability, right, to access intuition, get instincts, etc. It's how you wield it and whether or not you're in tune with it and whether intentionally is informing the way you coach, which your coach, obviously, I know her. I think I do, right? Is very intentional and very in tune with their intuition and uses it to guide how they coach. And that makes it really, and I think it ties perfectly to, knowing if coaching would benefit you or are you looking for accountability? And I think, what you were saying with her is yes, like the accountability is probably one of the biggest um, benefits that we talk about with coaching because, and it's going to look differently. I think people look at accountability as like, oh no, I have to do it, this thing, right? But it, like you said with your coach, like there's a compassionate and heart-centered layer to the way that they hold you accountable. And so finding the right person that meets you where you're at for what you need, your personality, your style, all of the things is really important. But accountability is probably really crucial. If you have been bumping up against the same life lessons, the same challenges. Maybe they're masked in different areas of your life, which this is the case for all of us, right? Like we learn the lesson maybe, and then it shows up somewhere else, and we continue to layer in the deeper learnings of the lesson. This is just part of evolution. This is part of life, right? Your life experiences are informing how you show up and what's coming in front of you. And if you're continuing to bump up against the same things over and over, I don't know why I can't break through this habit, or I can't build this new habit, or I can't do whatever it is. Maybe you need accountability because, you know, we talked a lot about New Year's Eve resolutions, right? I think those are starting to kind of find their way out because people aren't necessarily resonating because statistically, most people don't keep up with them. But there is that collective understanding of starting a new chapter and having that collective momentum. There's something really exciting about knowing that you have support or you're not alone in working towards something that you really, really want to accomplish, whether it's change, whether it's a new habit, whether it's something external outside of you. And coaching, runs the gamut of personal to professional to relationships, everything. But I do think that accountability is really key. If you need the support, if you need that layer to help you stay in line with whatever your goals are. And I think, we have here navigating life transitions. That's a huge reason why people come to coaching. You are starting a new chapter in your life, be it, maybe gosh, I think about things that I've come up with clients, right? You are a parent, you're a mother. I'm just speaking on
Yeah.
personal experiences, not my personal, but people I've worked with, right? You're a mother and you are navigating this life transition because what happens? You are a totally new version of yourself. And that comes with all kinds of questions and doubts and fears and excitement and all of the things. And you need the sounding board and the accountability to continue to come back to yourself or to continue on in whatever that looks like and not losing yourself, or you have a career transition. There's so many different ways that can look. But I think having that person who, like you said earlier, isn't wrapped up in the emotions of it, can objectively hold the space, but I think objectively and compassionately hold space for you and pull the answers from you is really, really necessary.
Yeah. A lot of times, how it presents for those in my atmosphere is this inner calling or this inner knowing that you want or you think life could be different, should be different, but there's a lot of overwhelm
Hmm.
around. I don't know how to get from point A to point B. It seems like too much. It seems like too drastic of a life change. I
Hmm.
just can't see the path. And even if you are just curious about what the next possible step might
Hmm.
be of achieving that goal, having that new way of life. We had COVID, and there's a lot of people, I think, in the professional space looking to transition, create more work-life balance, be more present, really reaching into that inner knowing and what that might be. Coaching is for you. That curiosity, that's what I would say is coaching is for you. And
Hmm.
that next best step would be finding a coach. So, how do we find a coach? And one, I would just start off by saying a lot of coaches, and Michelle and I included, hold an intro consult call so that you can get to know us. And I really recommend that with any coach before diving in. Get a sense of what are their methods? How do they work with people? And aligning to see if your soul feels called to working with that person. Other ways to find a coach is like clarifying what you're seeking. So, really, what kind of support are you looking for? Business, personal growth, health, spiritual exploration. What else, Michelle? How do we find coaches?
Yeah, well, I think we missed this point I wanted to touch on in the when we were talking about how to know if coaching would benefit you is I think this is really important to mention is I had here, you're ready to explore not the what of your goals, but the why behind them. And I think the right coach for you isn't going to help you set goals, right? Like you can Google how to set goals. You can look up SMART goals. What does that acronym stand for? You can go line by line and you can intellectualize your way into goal setting. And I think a lot of people do that. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't have the formal or the foundational training of coaching can guide you to just set goals, but it's the why behind them. It's having that understanding of getting deeper, going deeper because and I brought this up because it's really important because I would say 10 out of 10 times you go into a coaching relationship and you come with a surface level shift, something you want to change. And I would say most times it's habit based, right? It's like, I want to start this new, right? It's a physical thing. I want to be healthier. I want to, or it's work related, right? It's always this kind of external marker. And you start there, and with the right coach who can really pull from you and really be present and listen deeply, they're going to help you get to the root of why you actually want to make the change so that you're really, again, rooted into something deeper and your goals now are less surface based and they have real true meaning for you. And that's really part of the key of sustained change is that it holds deeper meaning. It's connected to why you care so much about change, why it's important right now. And so I think that's really important.
I'm
So,
glad you called that out. It makes me think about at some point in my relationship with my coach, she says, "Remember when you came to me to help navigate through your parents' divorce?" And we both kind of giggle because that was the catalyst at first, is I was just
yeah.
having a really hard time functioning, processing, but at the root was obviously other things that were holding me back in many places from life that we could get to the bottom of. So I
Yeah.
love that you brought that back up. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I think you covered a lot of this. The discovery calls are so important because it's like a vibe check, honestly. Oftentimes, and I'll go back to the therapy of it all, is like, oh, you're frozen. Um, Hold on, let's pause. I'm gonna hit. Okay. Um, yeah, so in regard to how to find a coach, I think you covered a lot. The one thing I always say is like one of the first notes here was like to get clarity on what it is you're seeking, which I think sometimes can be a big ask. Some people know like are zeroed in like on a certain area, and some people, like you said, is just an inner knowing that something is stirring, something needs to shift. And I always love to reference the hallway coaching questions because I think it's like the quickest, like it's a quick way to just zero in on what it is you're looking for change. If you're like, I know something's got to change. I want to work on this. I want to do this, right? Like, some coaches will take you through a whole coaching wheel of different areas of your life to get clear on where you want to you prioritize your growth. Because the truth is, you're probably in coaching more often than not, start in one area of your life. And just like anything, when you start to make change, it ripples into other areas. I think you said this earlier, but we've said this in so many other episodes of once you start, it's really hard to unsee. So when you start to make change in your life, you start to come into alignment. That's the language you and I use. And what I mean by that is like you come back to yourself. You start to do things and start to shift the way you live your life to live from the inside out versus living from the outside in. At least this is a common theme that I see through every coaching relationship. And so all that to say, I brought up the hallway coaching questions because I journal these all the time. I would say all the time, but when I am, I'm always working, I would say I always have some sort of personal vision for every month. It's how I track my days, it's how I prioritize, and it's rather flowy, flexible, but there's always something guiding. And I use the hallway coaching questions to guide a lot of the journal prompts. And it's so helpful with clients as well. And I bring this up with how to find a coach, but it can really be anywhere. It's like if you need a quick shot of clarity, of just kind of where to orient yourself, what direction do I want to go in, or what do I want to talk about first? If you know this is your first discovery coaching call and you're like, what do I want to bring up? I don't know. There's so many areas of my life I want to work on, or there's more than one thing. The hallway coaching questions are like this. It's like a foundation of all coaching, but it's this very rapid kind of narrowing down of the grow model. And it's literally coming back to the present of the first question is where am I now? Because we want to know where are you in in your life? What's coming up? What's present for you? The next question is where do I want to be? Where is my desired outcome? What do I want to see happen differently? And then the last question is like, what's getting in the way, right? This is what your coach is going to help you with. And it can help you, I think, in getting clear about what are some of the obstacles, what are the limiting beliefs maybe that you hold on to, or what are the gaps in your understanding or your experience. And when you have a little bit of those answers, I think it can help you find a coach because you're going to have a little bit more of a clearer filter on who's speaking your language, whose niche maybe represents what you're looking for. So there's a lot of different layers, but those questions, those three questions are such a great way to get a little bit more clear. And like I said, I use them to journal. Sometimes they will always come up in coaching in the context of a coaching partnership with someone, and maybe they come up in those exact words or they come up in different ways, but I use them on a regular basis just to really kind of reset with myself, recalibrate. Where am I now? I think it's a great way to end a month or to start a month for me personally, or a season, to understand, kind of acknowledge where am I at, what's been working well for me, what's not working, and what do I want to see differently over the next, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever that looks like for you. I always think is really, really helpful. I love those questions. So I'll use that as a how to find a coach and how to get clear on it. And I think you mentioned a lot about, what's your soul calling you to, your intuition. And if that's not your language, I mean, the chances are, if you're listening to Karmic Mirror podcast, that is very much your language. But if you find yourself to be someone who is maybe more logical in the way that you approach things, or more practical, maybe you're more Virgo minded, um, or Capricorn, or all the things, all the grounded earth signs. But I think that is a really kind of objective way to look at, to approach the same ask. How do I find a coach? How do I find someone that is the right fit for me? And I don't think I mentioned this before, but the discovery calls, really, like, people offer them, not, some people, you may find that people are trying to sell you on a coaching package, and that's one thing. You may find that someone's genuinely just trying to get a feel for you as a client and whether or not they can actually help you. And that should be, I think, the experience, because you're not going to match well with every person. Think about it in dating. You don't just, always go on one date and you're like, that's it. I'm locked in for the rest of my life, right? Or I'm locked in for X amount of time. You need to feel around, and you may talk with a coach, but this is where you get to start exercising your own authority, your own discernment in those examples, right? It's like even the discovery call, you get a lot out of, because you get to exercise whether or not you can walk into this conversation and not feel pressured to partner up with someone who doesn't align with you, who doesn't speak your language, who doesn't have the same type of energy that you're looking for or that you're craving. And so, give yourself the time and the space to explore those type of calls, because they are really helpful.
Yeah. And circling back, what was coming up for me when you were talking about once you see the thing, you can't unsee the thing, right? Is full circle that
Hmm.
story about I had started going to coaching because therapy wasn't quote unquote working for me, whatever the reason that might be. And I think at the time, what's meant for you won't miss you. And also, I think
Hmm.
that this particular life coach and outlet and this world of other coaches and therapy and techniques that I've been exposed to via way of my life coach, I couldn't escape it. So not to like throw the spirituality into it and the energy, but it just kept coming up for me. And
Hmm.
initially I was just having a
Yeah.
really hard time dealing with my parents' separation and then my sister and my brother-in-law's separation, who I'd known from a very young age. And ultimately, looking back, I wouldn't have said this at the time, but looking back, what was at the core of that was codependency, really being so tied to the outcomes of what was going on in their lives and not differentiating my
Hmm.
life and my needs from the needs of family members who were calling upon me for help and support. And to your point, Michelle, that was a moment in time that was happening all over in my relationships. And it's something that I was able to then through line and continue to work on and heal and see where it pops up and take action items from a coaching perspective of what was the next easy step for me. And we do have that podcast if anybody's interested in goal setting. Small Steps, Big Moves, I
Oh
think is
yeah, one of
called,
our
where we
first
talk about that
ones.
as well. Yeah. And then I think that comes back to like what to expect from a coaching relationship. And understanding that I know for you and I, if we're not a good fit for people, we don't take it too hard
Hmm.
because we just know that if someone is not feeling the way that we approach things or our specific way of coaching, then there will be someone out there who will be better served for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just from a personal perspective, I am not in coaching for the quantity of people to work with and for the
Yeah.
money of it all. We all need to live and survive, and you need to coach to have experience to inform your practice. However, I am so very, very tuned in to the quality of the relationship and whether or not I can actually support and serve this person in front of me. Or, and I think, and I'm just using my personal opinion on it, right? I think that when we feel the pressure to help everyone, it feels very ego driven and it feels like I can help you versus like we're just not meant to. And on the flip side of that, I know that when I accept the wrong, if I accept the wrong type of working relationships where I am not the right fit, they are not the right fit, vice versa, um, it's a real energy drainer for me personally. That's a
Yeah.
big indicator. And when I walk away or walk into a session and I am energized and I feel prepared, I feel ready, like those are all indicators. Like I feel, it feels right. And so I think that's really important because it goes back to the ICF accreditation, is like, you know, having ethical standards of knowing when and when you need to suggest maybe therapy or other healing modalities to someone to explore, and coaching may be not right for them at that time. It doesn't mean never, it just means right then. And I think the core thing about what to expect in a coaching relationship is that coaches need to listen very deeply. I think we learned very, very early on it was like a 70-30 rule. And this is going
Mhm.
to flex, but it's like if your coach is doing the majority of the talking, they're not listening to you. Um, this is a space for you to explore, to express so that they can listen and extract from what they're hearing and put it back in front of you, reframe it, or whatever that looks like. So I think that's really important. You should also always expect confidentiality, ethical
Yeah.
standards. Those are just kind of baseline in the coaching, from a coach.
Going into it as a client for those who are interested in coaching, just being honest and sharing feedback.
Mhm.
And I do this in my practice and I encourage other coaches too. And I encourage clients to give feedback if you're not getting what you need out of the relationship, being open and having that conversation. For me, it looks like a 6 week check-in. I have a questionnaire where you can be frank and honest about the relationship and what you're getting and what you might need more of
Mhm.
because it is a partnership. And
Mhm.
if you could be utilizing your coach in a different way, or maybe it's just not a good fit, you're not seeing growth, it is important to have that mutual conversation, just to make sure you are getting what you need and remembering that you create it's a container that we're co-creating together, and so
Yes.
it's important for both people to show up appropriately. And I hate using that word, like appropriately, and by appropriately I mean authentically,
Mm.
because that is where you'll get the most out of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, there have been instances where I have had to, not often, but I've had to cancel a session because I just wasn't in the right space.
mhm.
Whether it was like I can think back, maybe there's an experience where I've had like a migraine and yes, physical pain, but also I know that energetically and emotionally, I'm going to show up a little bit resentful because I'm not feeling good. And how is that being present for my client? And so for me, it's just being honest and to your point, be showing up appropriately, right? Like if you're going through something and you're a coach, I think sometimes, we feel again, it's like I have to show up. No, I have to be real with my client. I have to be a human being because I'm expecting them to show up and be a human being as well. And I'm going to accept all of the highs and lows that come with that for them. And I have to be honest with them and give them my full self. And so, just being honest, like you said, but I think that as a client, yeah, expecting that you're going to get asked for feedback. And if not, feeling confident to give that feedback is really important. And that should start from the get, right? Like I think when you start talking to a client initially or vice versa, there should in that conversation be some feedback asked. What is your style of communication? What do you expect to get out of this? All of those things. I like to ask clients too at the end of sessions. Maybe it's not every single session, but a lot of times asking them for any feedback if anything stood out for them, because I just want to understand in the moment what's coming up for them as a result of our conversation that day. So I think that's really important. I'm always asking, I personally always give a recap after our sessions, and I always include a couple questions for them to reflect on throughout the week, and that gives them some more space to continue the integration and the reflecting. It's not consulting. Coaches don't give advice.
Mhm.
And ultimately, yeah, people do come oftentimes to coaching and they're looking for, show me how to do this, or can you tell me, I don't know, what do you
Mhm.
think, right? Like you said. And for me, it's always putting it back onto the client of, well, I think you know the answers. And if you don't know it right now, that's okay. But sometimes not every question needs to get answered in the moment exactly. Sometimes it's about discernment and learning to let the answers come to you or come through you. So yeah.
And if that's what you need, then that might be you might not be looking for a coach, you might be looking for a consultant to help
Yeah,
you
yeah, or a
create
mentor or something
XYZ.
of that nature. But um, other myths, right? You need to have your life together before coaching, which
Does one ever have their life quote unquote
yeah,
together?
yeah. And you know what? Maybe you do feel like you have your life together, but you're ready to level up. That works too, right? Like you're ready for that. And that might look very different, right? I think about people who coach high-powered professionals and CEOs, et cetera. In a lot of ways, there's something working right for them, but they're ready to go to the next level, or they're ready to expand into other areas of their life, right? There's always something else. Something I always think there's more life to experience, more juice to extract if you choose to. Um, and then going back to the advice, right? Here's another myth. Coaches tell you what to do, but the truth is, good coaches are going to help you discover what you actually want and desire for yourself. And they're going to help shed the light on it versus telling you because we don't have the answers, right? Like you said earlier, I think you said like they're looking to you to provide answers or to give them the answer. And the truth is, whatever answer I could give any person I'm working with is going to be informed by my lived experience in my life. It's an answer
Yeah.
from my voice in my own tone in my experience. And that is going to be very different from your lived experience. That's why it's so important, the listening piece. And the other, another one that came up was coaching is for people in crisis. It can be, but it's actually really just for anyone who is ready to intentionally grow, pivot, or deepen into themselves, into alignment.
And I would say that if you have made it this far in the Karmic Mirror podcast and on this topic, that might be a good indication that you're ready to start exploring what a coaching relationship might look like. And, while there are a lot of myths and misunderstandings, I think the best way to, and this is very, again, not a human design episode, a very three line of me to say is like, just get in and start doing it. I don't want to, maybe not for everybody, but is to take that next step, start looking for coaches, start having those consult calls to really get a sense of how coaching can benefit your needs and what you're looking to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, and to your point too, whether you have a three line in your profile or not, so much of coaching is experimentation and living the experience because how do you know until you know whatever your profile is? I mean, we talk about experimentation um, through coaching with every person that I've worked with because some of it is trying things on, seeing if it fits for you, and having that accountability and that coaching space to come back and reflect on what actually came up. No, I tried this for a week. it doesn't work for me. It's not what I'm into. Let's try something different and really exploring all of those paths together. And I think doing it alone, I think that if you were going to make all the changes alone, we would do it by now, right? Like I always think about that for myself without
Mhm.
coaching. If I was going to make all these changes, on my own, we don't live in this world alone. And so sometimes it is really, really helpful to have that space and that trusted, that safe space that is confidential, that is really centered around you, around your strengths, around your capability, your potential to help you see it for yourself. And so, to Ali's point, I think you were talking about the booking the calls with us. Yeah, we both offer a discovery call. You can share. I offer an hour-long discovery session. The hour is truthfully, it is a coaching session, but it's like an introductory coaching session, and it's to get a feel for whether or not my style of coaching would work for you, with you, and vice versa. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it looks like to work with me. I will say that I overall, you'll see a lot of my wording on my website is about somatics. And what I mean by that is in our coaching sessions, I am going to ask about where you feel things come up in your body. That's somatics, because I want you to feel things, not intellectualize everything. So we're not just going to always talk about the things, we're going to help you move through some of the underlying emotions so that we can not keep them trapped in our body. That's really important to my style of coaching. So it's a lot about the somatic awareness, so tuning into what your body is holding. It's about mindset shifts. It's about intuitive inquiry, because yes, I am a trained coach and I'm going to ask you questions. And I'm also going to really, really exercise what feels intuitive to me, which is a lot of gut instinct. And so, and I like to speak to energetic attunement because, like I said earlier, it's a lot focused on living from the inside out. And that's really important. That really informs my style of coaching. And so you can book with me and then I'll hand it over to Ali because we both coach.
Yeah, I think you can find us on Instagram. We both have websites as well. We'll tag some of those in the show notes. And you start in the coaching program, they start to have you think about what your niche is.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you remember that, Michelle. I used to get very like hung up on my niche. And for me, the type of client that I work really well with is one that is in deep transformation or feels as though they're having that call of there's something else out there, shifts along the same lines as Michelle. That self-awareness piece is really one, and I have a lot of different tools on the background that I can use and resources to pull out that inner knowing and almost that blueprint of we were all meant to live life and be life in an easy flow state. And it's helping my clients get that calling back home to themselves and their self-awareness, which is thinking about what those programmings are, why they have those blocks, and where those might stem from, which is not going all the way into therapy, but it is breaking down into that root cause of what's ultimately holding us back and breaking it down into steps and calling out those consistent and I say calling out, that sounds a little harsh. Like, I'm gonna call you out. But, to be fair, maybe that's not the wrong terminology to use for me because I feel like that's kind of how my life coaches work with me, and that works really well. And so, in the most loving way, is calling attention with my clients when I'm seeing patterns or things that are holding them back as well.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my approach and my niche. And I also, having in corporate America, that career coaching and that next level of career coaching is also a niche that I fall into pretty seamlessly as well. So if you are looking for coaches, you have two right here at your disposal. And with that, is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to coaching before we get into our self-love check-in for the day?
No, I think we covered the basics pretty well and just like do your research, find the people who you really, like you said, it's like it's part vibe check and it's part, does this person, do I feel really confident that I can make change, in this container with this person?
Yeah. So our self-love check-in for the day, any memorable feedback you've gotten from a client or student, Michelle?
Yeah, I'll use a recent one. So I have a client who what they recently shared was, and I pulled it from our transcript of our call. I don't feel like I have to prove myself anymore. I create when it feels aligned, and I'm more connected to why I do what I do, even in the mundane parts of my life. I'm not chasing inspiration online. I'm looking for what genuinely moves me, and it feels like I have all the time in the world. And I love this, what they shared. This particular client always has something beautiful to share, and it's really exciting, without getting attached to the outcomes. It is really lovely to watch someone unfold. And I will say this, like the most satisfying thing for me working with someone is when I start to see them live with more ease in their life, but in their body, because that's something that just really, really threads itself through my style of coaching. I want people to feel rooted in their personal power and able to trust and live in ease in their bodies and their minds and their souls. And so when I get some feedback like that, it's validating. Although I will say on the flip side, I don't want to get caught up in someone else's feedback because it's not about that, but it is really helpful. It is validating to know that the things that I value, I'm attracting clients who also are seeking that.
Mhm.
What about you? Any memorable feedback you've gotten from a client?
Yeah, I think the one that I've heard as of late, but that just always lights me up and really makes me feel called to continue this coaching work is I could not have felt more seen.
Mm.
And that breaks down that importance to me of coaching is really allowing people to be in their authenticity and making moves and decisions based on their alignment and their soul's path and their guide. And when I'm using my skill sets to help people really dig into their authentic being and speak their truth and take steps and action items to live a more XYZ life, whatever they're trying to do.
Hmm.
That's the feedback that really lights me up. And I think that other one that I always share in this, when we say that we were coaches before we were even coaches, you and I
Hmm.
have a long tenure of being in that corporate America where we were leaders and coaches before we went through Journey Now Lumia. And one of the best feedback I've ever gotten is because, of course, in corporate America, it's in sales. How can we coach and teach people to drive those numbers up? And I had coached someone on diving into the numbers, but really making it personal and working towards goals for themselves. And I was no longer at that company. And I got a message from a woman who, from that coaching relationship, had worked out her finances and finally built it to a place where her and her daughter were going on just this like ridiculous vacation together. And that to me is coaching, is helping people to have experiences and be at places in life that help them really thrive and live to their highest good.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah. Less about the what and more about her why. Less
mm-hmm.
about, which I think is so key. It's like you can find satisfaction and fulfillment in your daily life, and we don't have to seek purpose solely out of the 9 to 5. And also, you can use coaching and you can use this that type of container to understand why you do what you do. Why does what you do for a living inform the other areas of your life, and why does it matter? Like it matters because what's most important to me is the experiences with my daughter or with my family, and this is the vessel to which I get to do that instead of, I think on the other side of that, a lot of people can get really beat down on the 9 to 5 and in the pressures of the work because that's the only aspect that they're looking at is the what in front of them and not the why any of it matters. And I think that perfectly ties up one of the many, many reasons why working with a coach can be so impactful, working with the right coach. So, just to close out our episode, I think one thing Allie and I can really, really agree on is that coaching is never about fixing or changing into someone totally new. It is so much centered on remembering who you are, who you came here to be, and then stepping into that. We say coming back home, and we say that whether we're talking about straightforward coaching or the esoteric, because all of this is creating more awareness and then making the shifts that bring you back to yourself, back to whether you call it wholeness or fulfillment or in purpose, on purpose, all of those things I think are right. And so that's my take. We had a little question here to close out the episode, if we like. If you could get support right now for one thing that you are dreaming of, what would it be? That's it.
All right. Until next time, Karmic Mirror community, we love you and hope that this episode served you well. Thanks for tuning in. If you resonate with today's conversation, connect with us on Instagram at Karmic Mirror Podcast and send us a message.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're loving Karmic Mirror, we'd appreciate a glowing review or a share with someone who could benefit.
As we close, remember, life is not a one-size-fits-all approach. How are you honoring your unique path? Stay curious and always be kind to yourself. Until next time on Karmic Mirror.